Okay, let's do a couple of more things just to finish this off and also to show you one or two extra techniques. Come up to my ink layer and turn on Alpha Lock. Now what brush do I have? Let's come back down to airbrushing again. Let's try soft brush down the bottom. I'm going to choose that very deep color I used for the key line, but now let's play around with it a little bit. Let's try, it's still fairly deep brown, but it's lighter than what I had. Opacity on 100%, nice large brush. Yeah, that'll do. And I'm just going to go over this key line, and hopefully you can see this. I'm lightening the key line towards the top. And maybe just come down around here. And in one or two places, I'm just going to lighten the key line just so that I get the idea of light coming from above. That's a little bit too light, I think, around the legs. Around the back and the top of the tail, maybe, but not the bottom and not the legs. So let's choose our deep color again and add in, yeah, that makes the legs stand out a little bit better. And let's try this color here. I just want to see what happens when I lighten up the key line around this area here. I think a little bit darker for that. I need some separation, but not as much as I had. I think I prefer that. Can I do it just here, just on the bit of the nose? Just where the nose wrinkle is, and what about the nose itself? Yeah, okay, I'll go with that. What about the mouth? Let's try this red, but I'm going to make it a lot deeper and less saturated. See what that looks like. Yeah, I'll go with that. The point is, it's worth going over your key lines with different colors just to see how those key lines fit. There is one more thing. Let's try that very deep original color there, because I think under the chin needs a little bit of strengthening up, and just around where the head is, just on the underside. And I can refine my key line. Okay, the next thing, let's try coming to our background color, and I'm going to lower the color of it like this. If you come from a traditional background, this must be great, because you know how it is. You do a painting or you do a drawing with colored pencils or pastels. Your background after a while becomes set, but with this you can come in at any time and just play around with it. And so yeah, I quite like that. Now I'm going to create a new layer on top of everything. I'm going to pinch in a little bit. I'm going to put my picture down here because I want to do a few rays of light coming down, and that's going to be easier for me when I have plenty of space above the actual picture on my iPad. Now what shall I use for this? Let's try medium hard airbrush, and let's make sure I've got white so I'm getting a preview of what I'm doing. No, that's a bit too small. Let's try medium hard blend. How big can that go? Oh yeah, much bigger. Let's try around 20%. And I'm going to start off with very little pressure. And then as I get towards the top of the picture, I'll apply more pressure. Let's see what happens with this. Does it respond? Very light, going harder and harder and harder, and yes. But I'm going to hold my pencil until I get assisted drawing, and I'm going to create a line like this. Let's do another one. Start off down here, very soft, press a bit harder, and hold, and I get this. I'll push this in a little bit so it looks like I've got a spotlight rather than just parallel light like this. Make my brush size a bit smaller, start off soft, go hard again, and yeah, that's kind of working. And pull up and push down so I get the amount of light that I want. I'll make my brush a lot smaller and just come to the side, gradually increase, and do that. A little bit smaller again, and do that. Now what if I come to my eraser and I'm long tapping so I get the same brush, opacity down low, brush size nice and small, and add just one or two little gaps in the light like this. Let's lower the opacity of this way down. Now what about a different layer blend mode? Let's try add because that's a pretty intense one. And yeah, that's kind of working. But I'm going to set this fairly low. I don't want this completely dominating the picture. Maybe about there. And the final thing I'll do, I have to come right down the bottom and add a layer here because this is going to be underneath the cat. I'm pretty certain I can use the same brush, but I'm going to choose a very, well, I'll sample the color from the canvas. Then I'm going to come so it's almost black, but not completely. And brush size set fairly large. Well, not that large, 9%. And just draw underneath like this. And come to my eraser with a long press so I can also get rid of bits of this. Definitely around the tail. And as before, I'm going to come to our blur tool and just blur this out there. And turn off my adjustments by tapping on the icon again. That's a bit too strong at the bottom, so I will tap on the end and lower the opacity down a little bit. So I've got a little bit of the background color coming through about there. It's a very simple shadow, just so it looks like our little kitty is sitting on the ground. And let me just take a look at this for a minute. And now I've done that, now I've made the background darker with light coming down from the top, I just want to do one more thing. I will come up to the layer which is below the ink layer. That's layer 6. I will tap to create a new layer. And I'm going to set the layer blend mode of this to overlay. You've seen how some layer blend modes make things darker and some layer blend modes make things lighter. Well, overlay is one of those blend modes that makes things darker or lighter depending upon the brush you use with it. I'm also going to take down the opacity down to around about somewhere between 70 and 80%. Yeah, I'll work on that for now. Now for my brush, I'm going to come to soft blend in my airbrushing. I'll set my opacity down low. My brush size, I want to be bigger, about there. Now what about my color? I've got kind of a dark teal color. Here's something I am going to do. I'm going to come to my disk and I'm looking at this and I'm going to sample a section of fur there. And you can see my color is sitting at about, say, 2 o'clock on my color wheel. I'm going to move that color around so that I get pretty much the opposite color and I'm going to make it darker. I'm getting kind of a deep teal color. Now, is this going to work? And I'm coming underneath and I'm adding a little bit of this deeper color here. Now at the moment you probably can't see much of a difference because I'm building it up slowly. Make my brush size smaller, take the underside here. I'll up the opacity so maybe you can see me making my brush strokes. Now because I'm building these up, you may not see a huge amount of difference so far, but look, if I make this invisible for a second, now you see it. I'm putting in a little bit of the opposite color. The theory goes that that will be the kind of colors you might see in the shadow areas. And with the light source on top, it's helping to match the shading to the kind of shading you might see when you suddenly have a strong light source. We've already got it at the top with these kind of colors because they're being affected by those different shafts of light. But I've chosen one of those lighter colors and I'll come down here. This is more for the purposes of showing you the principle rather than me wanting to do too much more work. In fact, no, I don't like that color. It's not bad, but I want something a little bit more yellowy. So let's try sampling this kind of yellow color here. Maybe up the opacity so you can see this in action. And I'm putting a couple of extra brush strokes just in some of these bottom areas, maybe a little bit just on the front of the legs like this. How about just a little bit under the cheeks? I'm not sure about that. But let's take a look at this now, without and with. I'm using the overlay layer blend mode along with some darker and lighter colors just to bring out the 3D form of the cat a bit more than I had before. And the nice thing is I can fade it all the way out and fade it in as much as I want. Now the reason I set it to about between 70 and 80% is that if I decide I want a little bit more of a push, I can take it all the way up to 100%. But in this case, that's too strong for what I want. So again, I will just rock this backwards and forwards until I get the kind of effect that I'm looking for. And maybe for this, I've got to about, 65%? Quick note here, when I was rocking my slider backwards and forwards, I'm not looking at my slider, I'm looking at the picture. That way, you're going to be able to judge it visually rather than thinking, what's the magic number? Now, just while I've done that, because I just can't leave well alone, I'll come back to what I had before, and I'm going to make it even darker. And just add just a little tiny bit just down the bottom, just in between the paws and on the underside of the tail. I'm working very fast with this, and so I'm shying away from the edge. But remember, this doesn't have a clipping layer, so if I go over, I'm going to get something like that. So you'd use your eraser just to get rid of those bits that are spilling out over the side. But again, because this is a layer blend mode, it plays with the colors underneath, so you can still see the textures. They're not covered up, so you can build up some really lovely, complicated, different textures, which nevertheless preserve the stripes of the cat. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you feel more confident about doing your own work in Procreate. But bear in mind, I have links to courses underneath which are top-rated courses, and they give you hours upon hours upon hours of tuition. There's also a link to the Drippy Cat Art Studio, which is on Gumroad, which is hundreds of brushes, dozens of pieces of paper. Let's do that last thing. What layer am I on? I'll make sure I'm on the very top layer, then come to Insert a File. I have the Drippy Cat Art Studio saved on Dropbox, also on the iCloud drive, with a whole load of stuff. I want overlays and marks. I want paper grey overlays. Let's just choose one at random. Let's try A4 handmade large grain. These are all A4 size. And for this, you tap on the little N and you can change this to either overlay or soft light tend to work better. I will go with overlay, and I can fade that out and fade that in to get a textured look to my cat. I'm sorry, ideas keep on occurring because there are so many things you can do inside Procreate. And this is just one texture from the Drippy Cat Art Studio, so check that out on Gumroad. In the meantime, if you can like and subscribe, that would be doing me a huge favour, and hopefully I will speak to you soon. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and enjoy Procreate.